What's good, everybody, and welcome back to Hyperfocus. It's 2022, and that means that we're going to be talking about the design trends for this year. In this video, we're going to cover some of the design trends that we think are going to be big hits this year, and as always, it's pretty much only our opinion, so we cannot really predict the future, but we can look back to the past and also kind of look a little bit about what's been happening recently and to see where those trends are going to emerge and how they're actually going to play out this year. So without further ado, let's jump straight into the video. All right, so design trend number one is 3D realism, and we've seen this already starting to play out a lot in 2021, and we think this is going to be taking over somewhat again in 2022. With the emergence of the metaverse and AR and VR playing much more of a role in design and experience over the next year, we're going to see this look starting to play out, whether it's through loops or through crazy, abstract, strange worlds. We're going to see this kind of illustrative form of 3D, which takes you into this kind of strange, abstract world with this hyperrealism really kind of merging together and playing a big role in design. The second one is a trend that has been happening for the last couple of years, but we're going to see this continue to develop even further into 2022. And again, it's because of things like AR, VR, and of course, the metaverse. Again, that's going to start to unfold. The story will definitely start to become bigger over the next years. And with that, from a viewer's perspective, or from somebody who's actually interacting with a product or with a game, or actually being in these environments, it becomes very much detailed heavy. As better of a word to say or to describe the environment that you're going to find yourself immersed in. And with that, logos need to be simplified because there's going to be a lot of noise in your kind of peripheral vision, and we need to continue to slim logos down. And that means basically getting rid of all the bits and pieces of logos that you don't really necessarily need, and just slimming that down to the leanest version of itself. We've seen this happening already just through the adaptation of different platforms and how logos need to move through different platforms. A great example just towards the end of this year was a little bit controversial, but still I think a really good example was the Pringles logo. This already happened towards the back end of 2021. We saw this kind of complete reduction of all the noise just back to its bare minimum, but still retaining the original spirit and character of the brand. And also, of course, as we mentioned many times on this channel, Burger King. So those are two very kind of high-profile companies that really took that leap, because of the trend, but also because of future-proofing how their logo will be used and how people will come in contact with their brands. So the next one is Playful Fonts, and we're going to see a move away from grotesques, and we're going to start to see more character-based fonts actually starting to play a large role. Again, as I mentioned before, it seems like I'll be mentioning the same brands over and over again, but Burger King again did this. They took on this 70s retro chic vibe that has started to kind of gain some kind of momentum. We're also going to see this playing out over this year, and with that comes these big, bold, and playful, characteristical fonts that really have a lot of energy. And I mean, the reason for this also is we're going to start to move towards more of a kind of diverse color palette, a little bit more away from the blacks and whites and super minimalism. We're still going to see that playing out, but we're also going to see this adoption of color palettes and single use of color palettes merged into brand experiences. And as we start to see more brands in motion, as it were, we will start to see these more kind of playful fonts emerging. The next one is anti-design. And what is anti-design? Well, anti-design is something that has been around for a long time and is pretty cool, I would say, in the design scene, but we're going to start to see this playing out more and more in the mainstream. So anti-design is really a play on breaking the design foundations. The design foundations being things like hierarchy within communication of how you display information and fonts, also grids as well, and how you actually place information within inside of a grid, whether that be a website or that just be a piece of print, album cover, a book, for example. We're going to see the displacement, the kind of the breaking of these patterns for the very sake of it being against the rules. And you know, rules are there to be broken, and of course that's super important. But you have to understand those fundamental foundations first to be able to break them. But we're going to see this kind of explosion of these designs playing out. If you look at in the mainstream, and if you look at things like The Life of Pablo from Kanye West, you see this very much playing out in mainstream media. This kind of, in some way, is pretty crappy looking design, but at the same time, it ends up being cool and avant-garde, and that being anti-design. So I think we're going to see a lot more of that playing out in mainstream communication and media over 2022. So the next one is something that we've already started to see happen over 2021 a lot, and that is the building of in-house design teams with inside organizations. Now, as brands and designs get much more complicated, as design plays more and more of an important role, companies starting to build in-house design teams. And that doesn't mean that these companies are not going to be working with agencies. Agencies will still, and design studios will still play an integral role in building brands. But what we'll see is that kind of handing on the baton to design teams, and we'll start to see more and more specialized design teams. For example, MailChimp have already started to do this. We've seen Airbnb doing this for a very long time, where you actually have in-house design teams, you have in-house departments who really embrace the brand, they live the brand, and they use the design systems that are being created in conjunction with other specialist agencies to actually start to roll out everything that's being created and actually kind of nurture it and own it and grow with that. So I think we're going to see a lot more of that happening as design and brand play a much more integral part inside the internal structure of companies. So we'll see this really starting to rapidly kick up a lot of speed and pace in 2022. The next one as well, I suppose, is kind of connected to this, is we're going to start to see living style guides and design systems really start to kick off. We've seen it over the last couple of years. Design systems have been a big topic for a very long time, but I think we're going to see these embraced even more from more and more businesses. As we know, gone are the day of PDF style guides, and we need to start to think about how we can translate all of the content from these kind of old school methods of communication within inside of teams into something that is usable, and the best way to do that through multifaceted teams, and especially during the pandemic as teams are widespread and positioned all over the place. You need to have some kind of central point of truth that brings everybody together, pretty much the precursors to full-on design systems. And it just becomes, again, more and more important that teams start to use these and companies start to adopt this kind of migration of this old school mentality of creating things that are static and translating those into digital platforms. Again, it opens up so many more possibilities for file sharing, for also developing pattern libraries, sharing code, also looking at animation curves, really having somewhere that is almost like it's a library somewhat, that is accessible and easy to get hold of, and when anything's updated, it doesn't get lost in the email chat, as it were. It actually is accessible to everybody, and everything is pushed at the same time. So again, I think design systems and living style guides again are going to play an even more important role in 2022. So there's lots of other trends that are going to be happening, things like NFTs, of course. I don't really want to take too much of a deep dive into these. The metaverse, we already mentioned that, as people start to embrace Web 3.0. The mainstream media is really getting on the back of the hype of crypto and of NFTs. And I think that's going to have a really big shift in our industry of where we start to put our resources, where we start to research and start to develop things. So I think it's a really exciting time for the industry, for people like us, for people like you, to really kind of get to flex a little bit your design processes and your design thinking, and think about how that can be expanded into other possibilities. So I think this year is going to be super exciting. I think this is very much the beginning. It is the precursor to what's going to happen, I think, over the next 10 years. So I think really, really exciting times. But 2022, lots of cool stuff going to happen from our perspective. Obviously, we don't have a crystal ball here at Hyperfocus. We can just kind of predict and guess based on our experience, but we see some pretty cool stuff emerging. So that just about wraps up. Super quick one. Happy New Year to all of you. As always, don't forget to subscribe, like this video. It helps us to continue to make content like this, and hopefully lots more of it in 2022. And as always, we will see you in the next one.